Started here. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Getting Creative. I'm going to start that again. Welcome, everybody, to Getting Creative with Canva and Keynote. Good to see you here. John, good to have you here. Oh, no, he just stood up. He walked away. He doesn't have his ears in. Tamara, good to see you. Hassan, Ronnie, I'm glad to see you. Tony Mobley's in the house. All right, so we asked Hassan because he's doing this big presentation, or did you do it already, or is it coming up?
So David, our contracts are usually 8 years in duration, 4 years in design, 4 in construction. So this is the design part has been done for this particular contract. We call it contract number 7. It's in construction now. So we are actually performing the work through the contractor on the bridge. The next contract, which I was telling you about, the footwalk extension, the design will start in fiscal 25 and finish 8 years later around fiscal 33.
Wow.
This is the previous design and current construction contract.
Long-term stuff.
This is long. Yeah. And each contract on general costs between $350 to $500 million.
Yeah. That's some money right there. All right. So, sorry, the number blew me away just a little bit. All right. So Hassan, you should be able to share. I hope. And, oh, look at that. Beautiful. Hey, Hassan, before we go any farther, if you could unmute yourself and just tell us how are you sharing that into the presentation, into our meeting? What tool are you using? You got to unmute yourself that we can't.
I am sharing it through OBS.
You're using OBS. Fantastic. Yes. Okay. All
right.
So
I have OBS and OBS.
Oh, you muted yourself again.
So this is the first slide. I mean, now let me, oops, go too fast. Okay. So this is the slide number 1. It just shows the scope of the work. Brooklyn Bridge is connecting Brooklyn and Manhattan. So this is basically showing that we have on both approaches, we need to perform the work, and also on the tower of Brooklyn Bridge. And in between the center of the bridge, that's where we try to show in minimum that what is the structure, how the bridge is supported by these arches on the bridge. Now let's go to slide number 2. Now this is you are looking at inside of the bridge itself. These are the arches which is supporting on both roadways on the bridge. And as you can see, David, this is almost 135 years old structure, never been worked on. Inside is in terrible condition. We actually demolishing inside and rebuilding the whole arches, preserving the historic fabric of this bridge. Let me see if I can bring myself in here and to cut like this way. And this is in general is the scope of the work. So inside we have asbestos, we have PCB, we have lead paint, any hazardous material you can imagine, we have it. And that's why the rehabilitation cost skyrocketed because of landmark requirement from federal. This is a federally funded contract. The federal requirement is that we have to use existing structure and existing bricks wherever possible. So at one point in time, we were thinking about sending each brick back to Italy and recoat them and bring them back. But the cost came out to be at that time close to tripling the cost of our structure. So we decided to use the similar bricks and use whatever we can from the existing structure and rebuild it brick by brick.
Can I interrupt with a couple of questions?
Absolutely.
Is that okay? First of all, the content of this is fascinating. I'm having a hard time focusing on the style, but it looks like your slides are 4x3.
Yes,
and now,
yes. These slides are usually, I don't know why our consultant prepared it on 4x3. Yes, it's prepared on 4x3
I
format.
have to say, I had a thing, Tamara, I think you were, it was the thing that we did together where they also provided, it was a government agency, and they also provided slides to me in 4x3, and I could not figure out for the life of me why. Do you know, is there a reason why someone would create slides in 4x3 nowadays? I mean,
I wonder if it's what they're projecting on.
oh, so that's what I was thinking, that like old projector
Have you been
screens.
into a government office recently?
Yeah, I was going to say
Think of a VGA projector
Right.
that's
at 480 resolution.
Wow. Okay.
This could be one reason. The second reason could be sheer incompetency of the government officers.
Yeah, don't blame on malice something that you could just do on incompetence and ignorance.
Right. Fair enough. There's one other thing that I'm noticing. I was watching there's a, I think someone posted in Discord, there's a TED Talk on death by PowerPoint. And he had, I think, 4 different points that he made. And one of them was, and this of course is true for Keynote or Canva also, is why he didn't understand why the default in Keynote or in PowerPoint was a white slide. He said that was such a mistake to have white be the background, because then the white becomes the brightest thing in the room and draws all the attention as opposed to the speaker. So I love the fact that these slides are not white, right? They have, but I am wondering about the color of the lettering on top of, because that's looks like a faded background maybe, or something like that. The white doesn't, it's a little like the word hazmat's a little difficult for me to read. And then at the bottom, I don't know, Tamara, do you?
I think what I would do is this is where I would use Canva because I love Canva for this purpose. I would put a block of color underneath it and then fly in those points as they were going. So it would be kind of like a balloon, but in this kind of presentation, I would probably keep it either blocky or maybe 15 rounded on the edges just to give it a little bit of something. And then I'd probably go point by point and let them come in as an animation. So
I'm glad you said that, because another point that this gentleman made that I was watching was that our eyes are, what did he say? Our eyes are drawn to size, movement. There were 4 things. I'm forgetting 2 of them. Size and movement were 2 of them. And so that's why he talked about animating text, having it fly in is good because it actually draws your attention to it. And then he also mentioned, and I'm sure you can do this in PowerPoint, but after you say each statement, keep it up on screen, but fade it, change the fading so that my attention is not there anymore. It's on the one that has just, come up full. So,
well, you might do that with just by putting a box underneath it so that it's text when it's not being profiled, but then there's a box underneath it that's in
which makes it pop
color
out.
Would be like a light blue maybe, or even that's one of the blues that's in the background to kind of it just focuses your eye on that box, and then maybe it goes away and pops up the next one, and the other ones can stay up but in that white, so they wouldn't be they could still be there if someone needed them, but they wouldn't be where the eye focuses.
Yeah. Great stuff. By the way, Hassan, this is not a ruthless review of this. This is us using you so as a guinea pig so that we can learn. So
absolutely.
And John has to say, John, what an honor to have you here.
Glad to be here.
Thanks,
That's all you were doing. It's fun. And I was going to do a ditto on, having it be balloons so that you have a solid color under it. Another thing that I've done is when you have long words like this, you can't get away from it. I try to not have more than, 6 or 7 words at all on the slide, but you take those bullet points and have them be on would be a cylinder. And as it turns, the one that's at the line fills the whole screen. Then you turn to the next one. So you could see it. If you're in a live presentation, you could roll it back and roll it forward. But at any moment, you only have that line and it's filling the screen as much as possible.
That's nice. That was another point that was made, is that we mistake, and John Snyder, I apologize. I'll throw to you in just a second, but he said that we mistake, our mistake is that the problem is not the length of our PowerPoints in number of slides. It's the length of content on each slide. So, if we were to break this out either as John Edelson just said, or just into 8 slides, interesting. John Snyder, I'm sorry. Good to have you here.
Thanks. Couple things. I would recommend, as far as making the text is not legible, there's not near enough contrast on that white to the blue. Couple things you could do to help that. I think the biggest one, what I would do is I would have it fade into a blur, the image in the background. So it's a blurred image behind the text. That'll help the text pop out. And you could add a drop shadow to make it pop out even more if you need all this text on the slide. The question is, do you need all the text on the slide? And if the purpose is to show like there's a lot to do, then yeah, a lot of text helps you see there's a lot to do. If it's to go through each item, then I would do like John Idelson said and put 1 line of text per slide and then maybe a separate image that reflects that. Or if you wanted, if it was broken into phases of points 1 and 2 were one phase and 3, 4, 5 were another phase, I would do 1 slide per phase. Just depends on what message you're trying to send with this slide. But it's really hard to read that text with no dimensionality on it on top of a busy photo in the background.
Can I just, sorry, Hassan, we're jumping all over you here. I just want to, John, you mentioned, oh goodness, I'm forgetting the word that you used, but okay. So in Canva, it's called lift. I just want to really quickly share with you. I was just working on this earlier today. We built a new playground at the school. And I have this text here and this text here, and I applied the lift effect to it. And I just want you to see what it looks like without that, because it's actually pretty, even though it's just a tiny little effect. So if I take that off, and I'll take it off down here also. So now there's nothing there. I mean, the one down here is certainly still legible, but it doesn't pop at all. This one, I found it was actually a little bit harder to read. And when you just add just a little bit of lift to that, which is different than shadow, although I'm not quite sure how, it just makes all the difference, I think. And so maybe doing something like that on these slides also would be another way to improve it. All right. Sorry, Hassan, please go.
Yes, thank you, Dave. Now, this one just only show the interior of the structure itself. Here we try not to show too much of an inside of the structure, but we just wanted to show especially the council members and the community board, that how the structure is supported, how the roadway is supported from underneath the arches, because they don't see inside. Our security protocol don't let anyone inside the structures, not even elected officials, until they have their security clearance. And this is the area which was 100 years old, and these arches were crumbling technically. So what we did, we put steel inside the bricks, so you cannot see the steel at all. They are in the layers of bricks. And we put the bricks back to save the fabric of the landmark, because landmark does not want it to have anything visible either from outside or inside of the structure. But we have to bring it back to the latest code from seismic analysis. So in case of earthquake, the bridge can stand. So it was basically retrofitting the existing structure and putting the steel bars and shear walls hidden underneath the brick facade. Let's put it this way.
That's wild. The graphic in the middle, is that, do you happen to know where that or how that was created?
So our consultant, they use a software. It's called, it's kind of a BIM, AutoCAD three-dimensional. So what they did, they scanned the interior walls, then they developed the 3D model. So we deal with 2D, all 2D models, because we designed something, the each bridge. So when the contractors see the structure and our drawings, they are all 2-dimensionals. But to do the frame analysis, we need the 3rd dimension also. So it came from AutoCAD.
That's great. Again, just because we're picking on everything, one of the things that's jumping out to me is that the text is very small, and maybe that's by design because you want the images to stand out. Because I'm obsessive compulsive, the image on the right, the ventilation system, is not the images are not centered on the page, I guess, right? It's off to it's very close to the edge, whereas the section of new infill wall is a little farther in. The text isn't either centered or justified below each thing. Little pieces like that, but that AutoCAD thing is fascinating. That's really cool.
Okay, now this is the Brooklyn side. It's a similar thing. We are showing what happened. We have a community both on Brooklyn side and Manhattan side. And so we have to show them what they are doing. Actually, it's the same work, but this slide is for the Brooklyn people who live in Brooklyn.
I can't even imagine having to do this for two different communities and trying to wrangle all those people to come to agreement on anything.
Now, this is the work on the tower. Here we try to intentionally not to show too much detail. So, I mean, what we did, we can compress the image. So it's not visible what we are doing, but basically what our people are doing, they are drilling from the top of the tower underneath steel bars, stainless steel bar connecting the top of the tower to the bottom of the tower and create a steel tower underneath this Gothic arches. And then afterwards vertically and also horizontally. So that will help us in seismic design. And inside the arches, we will put steel plates from the counter-terrorism point of view, but they will not be visible because those steel plates will be underneath the bricks. And of course, they will clean up the tower and replace the bricks which are not there. Now, one of the bigger thing on East River bridges is the traffic. These bridges, they have 1 million cars and commuters every day. So we are not allowed to close any lanes, especially during the peak hours. So most of the work is done overnight, but individual ramps on the bridge, we have 14 ramps on Manhattan side. We have half a dozen on Brooklyn side. We were allowed to close them one by one. So this is for the traffic people, that what we will be closing during construction. And David, that's why the cost of construction is expensive, because once you shift any work at nighttime, the cost almost double, and especially on weekend too.
Mm. Let me interrupt you one moment, John Edelson. Sorry about that. I just saw your hand. John, we can't hear you.
If I knew how to use Zoom, I'm so depressed I have to go to a 2:00 meeting, and I know you want information on your slides. The paper I got an A+ on at Northwestern University was about building the Brooklyn Bridge. I have a picture of the Brooklyn Bridge in my living room, and I've worked with the California State Parks in interpretation, and we had a similar brick issue, which was really interesting because the bricks that they made here lasted 100 years. The bricks that they did to replace them in the 50s lasted 12 years. So we've gotten worse at making bricks. So anyway, I apologize for interrupting, but if I could be of any further help, I would gladly offer whatever assistance or following what you're doing in the future, but I do have to run to at 2:00.
John, thank you so much for popping in. Hey, can I ask a question? And this is to Hassan and John Snyder, if you're listening. I'd be curious. I talked about this a little bit last week. I don't work in the corporate world at all, so I don't know. You know, some of the things that I'm saying about not having too much text on the screen and all that stuff, I know that that's true in the education world. I know that that's true in the presentation world, but is that true in the corporate world? I mean, do the same rules apply on these presentations, that you shouldn't have too much text on the screen and things like that?
Absolutely. Let me jump in. Yes, we were in our corporate presentation, our restriction is not more than 4 points on the slide and not more than 8 words on each line. The trouble is that City Council does not want us to present anything more than 6 slides. So the scope of the work we have to compress in. I mean,
Wow.
so they have between 6 to 8 slides, and they give each director between 5 to 7 minutes. And if we are not presenting our case fully, we have to come back again. And because they have to approve our budget. Now it's fairly funded, which means that 80% come from fairs, 15% come from state, and only 5% come from the city. And believe me, city is the one which give us most.
Wow, that's fascinating that they have restrictions on how many. Again, they're restricting the wrong thing, probably how many slides as opposed to. Yeah, John, do you want to jump back in?
Well, I just want to say, David, that the for-profit and training field can be just as bad as the education field in bad practices.
I just wasn't sure if the expectations are different in the corporate world, because I can imagine
what
it
we've
shouldn't
been
be,
able
but
to do
they-
with some of our
they are.
things is when we have to have heavy text on slides, we put them into the comments section and then print out a deck as a PDF. So the extra words are in there. And,
Gotcha.
and we do like we do with, they do it in commercials where you see a product and you don't see the little barcodes and all the small stuff. We take all that off. We scrub the slide. So when it's in the room in the presentation, it's not there. But when they look at the deck that we send them, all those notes and things are in there.
Gotcha. Tony, sorry, were you jumping in or was it someone else's voice I heard?
I was just agreeing that bad slide design is bad whether you're in corporate world or not, but people just don't worry about it.
Right. Right. I wonder, and John, maybe you know more, you probably know more about this than I do, but I wonder about if there have been studies, official studies about the effectiveness of slide decks, depending on how they're structured. I know that you all had a slide deck this past Saturday on creating a video, and you'll have to forgive me, I'm forgetting his name who presented it. David, right, thank you. He was in after hours and he invited people to give him feedback, and his slides were also very text heavy, and I suggested, moving away and making it more visual experience, because he can give me the words. I don't need the text, the slides to give me the words.
Oh, I mean, there have been a lot of studies and stuff. I think there's a Lessig method. There's a classic slideshow on identity where there's no words on the slide at all, or if they are, they're more visuals. And he does a 40-minute talk on identity where the slideshow is just following his speech, almost as subliminal messages in your ear. And that one has been shown and studied and played with. So,
who was that?
David Lessig. I think it's David. I should get the name. It's on identity, but it's a method where there's just literally a word or a image on every slide.
Yeah.
Most of the research I've seen is about retaining information, and it's essentially, especially with video, which I would argue is the same as slides, if your brain is trying to listen and read at the same time, it doesn't do either well. And so the words on a screen need to support but not distract from the words coming out of your mouth.
And
Hassan,
the old AT&T model with 7 items plus or minus 2. That's why our phone numbers were the way they were.
Right.
Anyway, this is fascinating. I wish I didn't have to do my day job.
Do your day job. Ronnie,
I'm going
and
to follow up with you on this project. I've just.
It's fascinating. Yeah.
Have you got in it yet, or you're bidding for it?
Hassan, that's for you.
Yeah, for you.
I am sorry, I missed the question.
Do you have the project and you're doing it, or are you just bidding on it?
So this project is designed, it's in construction right now. It's already 1 year in construction. So contractor is on the job site. If you are ever near the Brooklyn Bridge, you will see the whole area is wrapped around in tops. So this is our job. People, they will finish in fiscal 25.
Well, I will reach out to you when I go to New York, and I hope you have a documentary film crew following this.
That would be pretty
Documentary,
cool.
we cannot follow up because police are counterterrorism are extremely terrified of documenting and then leaking somehow if it leaked to the press. So we
Gotcha.
have construction photograph, we do have for videos, but they are like save in a vault.
Wow.
Fascinating. I gotta
That
go.
is
2
fascinating. All right,
o'clock,
bye.
guys. Take care.
Ronnie and Tamra. Ronnie, you want to jump in first?
Yeah. One thing that we've seen lately is the use of QR codes to have viewers link to more information and actually replacing a lot of bullet points and a lot of text on each slide with just a QR code, and then you can focus more on the most important part of the slide. So
Yeah,
QR codes could be a way to do it.
Yeah. And actually, I'm really glad that you brought that up. One of the things that I was looking at in, boy, Canva is really, there's something going on today with the app. Nothing is loading correctly for me. But over in Canva, they actually have one of the apps they have built in can create QR codes so that you can, yeah, here it is. So that you can create a QR code and pop it right into your presentation. So that could be another way to do it. That's great. Thank you so much. Of course, then the potential risk is that people won't read the other information. But Tamara, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna point out a couple things. One, that color theory, like what is memorizing is also something that is applied, I think, in some of the design theory for what makes a good presentation. So like we know that yellow is a memory color. So if there's things that need to be memorized, then using color theory and using how you use your white space to direct people to what you want them to know. So if there's a specific word, highlighting that word in color also gives people a takeaway, even if they didn't see all of the things. So that might be another thing, to take your big sentences and pick the key word and bold it in a different color. And then, it fades out, the next one comes in. I think that might also help it pop. But I think that bad practices come from the same thing that we talk about with our camera setups, that people are just used to it. They're used to bad practices. And it's only by changing the practice and showing them what's possible that, because it's beneficial to us as presenters to be presenting things that people are going to remember or have impact with or engage with in a way that they're not engaging with something else, which is super hard to fight what everyone else is wanting to do. I see it with audiences all the time. They can't wait to get to intermission to pull out their phone. They're addicted to them. So you're fighting with all of these external things. And how people receive information in a very static way that meets the needs of the city for 6 slides,
Absolutely. I want to just, I'm looking for something to share. Oh, here it is. So this is, you'll have to forgive that it's in a different language, but this is, so this is a keynote where I know there's a lot of words on here, but that's intentional. So this is a prayer that I was learning with my students. And the way I did it was we were learning it in phrases, and then I just created these highlights, and all this is a yellow box that is sitting on top of underneath the text. And then I just have it animate in and animate out. But yes, I think that's a really interesting, there are lots of different ways to draw attention to what we want people to focus on. The use of white space, as you said, movement, the size of the text. The gentleman this thing that I was watching, I don't think I have a good example here, and I do see you, John Snyder. He had a large piece of text up on the page. Oh, I can't find it right now, but he had the title and then he had the bullet points, and the title, of course, was larger. And he said, "What do you see? What are your eyes drawn to?" And he said, your eyes, and this is the default, by the way, in Keynote at least, the title is always larger. He said your eyes are drawn to the larger text, the title of the slide, which is argumentative, which could be argued is the least important part of the slide. It's the bullet points, if you have them, that are the most important part, not the title of the slide. So, John Snyder, go ahead. Oh, the hand went down. Or are you talking and we just can't hear you? I'm not sure.
I just didn't I hit my mute button.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was a good TED Talk. I'd recommend it. I think we also talked similar about a year ago on Education Hour about death by PowerPoint. I don't know the date though. The color is an interesting thing, especially if you have to be, you might have to check us on if you have to be compliant with any colorblind standards or accessibility standards, I should say, because that can be an issue. In general, I don't worry too much about that with my audiences because I know them, and contrast is the most important thing for any accessibility. And my question for you though, Hassan, I think the most important thing is, what's the purpose of the presentation? Like, are you trying to convince someone of something, just to give an update? Are you trying to get money? What will be different after you do it?
So basically, the thing is that once we know the project is ready to design, we need appropriation from City Council. And they decide that which fiscal year this contract will go. So every director, I am from bridges, they are from airports, they are from docks and harbor, they are from people from highways. Everyone wants their project to go fast. So when I go in, I try to give importance to them that this is the work we are going on bridge. What is this bridge? How many people are using it? For me, it's a little bit easier. Everyone knows East River Bridges, but the money part, they need to know the money, and they need to know what exactly work we are performing. They do not seem to like maintenance work. We do rehabilitation or reconstruction, which is more easy sell. And so what we are trying to sell them is the importance of the project, the scope of the work, duration, and the funding, which is not coming from the city most of the time.
Maintenance is not sexy. There's just nothing sexy about maintenance, but building something new or or even renewing or refurbishing, but it's the word maintenance. Yeah. John, did that?
Yeah, I would highlight the cracks. Nobody wants to drive across a bridge. And like if you said, we have 14 million drivers across this bridge every day, or whatever the number is, look at these cracks. We need to fix it. And then I would move into a second slide that maybe showed an example of the work you'll be doing. You had the outline of like the steps, but could you draw it as an animation where you had like a fake Brooklyn Bridge and you actually saw a block drilling down into it and reinforcements being put through it, so they can visualize like the actual work that's happening? Because on the outside, you don't see that. You just see a construction crew. You would assume they're not doing anything, but can you visually demonstrate what's happening inside of the bridge with a simple animation? So maybe it's taking a picture of the bridge and then just animating some, like a drill on top with a block going down through the middle of it, where you're going to have it in your reinforcements. So they'll see like, oh, this will be different when we're done.
That's an excellent idea.
Yeah.
The irony of this whole thing is that clearly this slide deck as you have it now worked because you got the gig. So we're talking about how it could be all better, but clearly it got the job done. It's entirely possible. And this is why I asked the question about the corporate world, because it may be that in the corporate world and the government world, where they're still expecting slides to be 4:3, that the stuff that we're talking about really isn't nearly as important. Especially if you know that you've got 5 or 6 minutes to get through a presentation, then I'm not sure that the length of text or the length of anything matters, because you know it's going to be done in 5 or 6 minutes. Tamara, what do you think?
Well, I would argue that it's more important, because I think that you're competing against everybody who's competing for the same pot of money. And so the person who gets their point across the best is absolutely going to be the person who walks away with that money. so in that case, doing what everyone else has done and doing what we've all done in the past, at some point that's going to come to a head where the person who's the most creative, the person who is visually able to be seen, heard, and explain themselves the best is going to be the one who walks away with the money. And so I think, like, as we're seeing, our expectations are different because of how television is, how the internet is, how many visual images people have in a day that they are bombarded with. It's in like the millions, right? So I think that as that becomes even more, I think it becomes even more and more important for all of us, even though they've worked in the past, even though, there are different rules and different things. I still think that that's where I continue to want to grow in Canva and using these different tools, because I absolutely know that it's not that status quo is great up to a point, but it is going to be the people who pull themselves up and out.
Yeah. There's a digital summit coming up for the Jewish world that I was invited last night to speak at. And my first question to them was, because I was surprised they hadn't reached out to me earlier, to be perfectly, not that I'm deserving of anything. But so my first question to them was, can you tell me a little bit about the production and about, what are you requiring as far as audio and video from the presenters? I wasn't concerned that I wouldn't be able to meet them, but I wanted to, and they responded that they have no requirements. And part of me felt like, I'm not sure I want to be associated with that. But the other part of me did what you just suggested, Tamara, which is, what, I'm just going to show up and look better than everyone else.
Yeah.
And hopefully that will, for me, it's not about getting business, but hopefully that will leave an impression. That's really what we're always trying to do with presentations, is leave an impression, make a mark. And if, and if everyone else's presentation or everyone else's, either their PowerPoint or Keynote or Canva presentation or their physical presentation or auditory presentation, if it's not good, then you're right. You're absolutely right, Tamara. You're going to stand out, and that's who people are going to remember. And having said that, everybody else will continue to create terrible presentations because we're stuck in, I just don't see large swaths of people coming to appreciate the benefits of really looking good, sounding good, creating good. I don't see that happening. So I think we are going to remain the outliers, but if that gets us more contracts with the federal government, then.
Right. I mean, but the thing is that people respond to that, whether or not they know they're responding to it, they are responding to it. I mean, it's one of the things, it is really hard. It takes a lot of practice. I still can't, I have the setup that lets me do it, and I still cannot look in my camera all the time. I'm still like learning how to navigate the space and be used to being on camera and because I'm a backstage person. I'm not a onstage person, but what you say has meaning. Like, I'll be in places where no one has their camera on, and then suddenly they are gravitating towards something I'm saying, and it has nothing, it's harder in our setting because we all come to the table ready. But I have found that when I've been in situations where not everybody comes to the table ready and doesn't try to do that, they're noticing it and they're responding to it viscerally, whether or not they have decided they understand why it's happening. So the more people who show up and do that, it's the same how the lexicon of language, they've done studies where they're like 8th grade girls form the most changes to our lexicon in the English language, because what happens when you hear a new word that someone that you respect is using, someone that you start adopting that language. And so I think it's the same with visual things too. The more people who show up and say, hey, this is important, or don't say, hey, it's important, but get results, then those changes are going to happen. They're already happening.
Yeah.
More of us have microphones now than we did in 2020.
That's true. That's true.
And it's still going to change.
Hassan, when you gave this, when this presentation was given, was it on site or was it done digitally like you're doing now?
That was done in very early 2020, David. So it was in City Hall on site.
And so is there a screen up that
they have those pullover things? You pull,
Yeah.
and they had a slide projector, the old-fashioned way.
Gotcha.
And
have you, sorry,
yes.
go ahead. I was just going to ask, have you done presentations since then that have been virtual?
Oh, yes. Now, after that, this is my job related. I also teach in City College. So basically, those are slightly better because, I mean, City College is much better equipped. They have a super large screen televisions, like around 100 inches or something. So that's why they set up this green screen for me when this is stuff, so I can do the presentation and show the drawings, larger drawings. And those are slightly better in quality because the cameras are better. City Council, the government part is always we go for the cheapest items. Yeah. So you will be surprised at the quality of our webcams in city government.
Wow. Yeah. Did the way that you would create a slide deck or the way that you would present a slide deck, did it change from presenting it in person versus presenting it digitally?
So normally in my presentation, as most of you indicated, it's not like a 6-10 items over there and that I am reading off the slides. I just want, I prefer to have just one sentence, and I explain to them what does it mean. If it can be animated somehow, for example, if a crane is lifting the bridge, if it can be shown easily. Unfortunately, sometimes we just don't have resources for people who knows how to do it. In my unit, I have 50 engineers and 30 architects. Most of them, they are not good in making presentations.
Wait, that's amazing. That's amazing. 50 engineers and 30 architects, none of which can figure out how to build a solid PowerPoint. That's amazing. That is so funny.
The power of owning one graphic designer.
Right.
One graphic designer. And believe me, Tamara, if I ask for one graphic designer, it will take city 10 years to approve that position.
I'm sure.
I know.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it's true.
And yet, at the same time, I think that certainly Canva, okay, I'm going to say it anyway, but I think I'm going to regret saying it after I say it. Certainly Canva has democratized graphic design so much. And I would not go so far as to say that we're all graphic designers, because we're not. I'm certainly not. I don't have an eye for it. I have fun with it and I love doing it, but I really don't have a good eye for it. It's not just graphic design is not just being able to put the elements together. It's knowing what elements to put together, I think. But to a certain extent, Tamara, I think that in some ways it's less about having a graphic designer on staff and maybe more about all of us learning the tools that can help us become our own graphic designers. Is that fair, do you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's true, but I also do think that it's time consuming. And so when you're listing engineers and people and you're kind of thinking through like what you're tasking them to do, a lot of it is time. You know, it's the same thing. You know, I used to be in the classroom and teaching, and it's like, you don't have time to do what you know is best practices because you have a job to do. And graphic design is a job. And even though the fact that we can all do it now, because I do a lot of my own graphics and I don't hire that person, that's how I'm able to keep my budgets even smaller. It's a considerable amount of my time outside of what I'm normally doing. Yeah. So I do think, like, yeah, thank goodness for Canva and places that have given us the opportunity to be better given the amount of time. But it's still, you know, I've gotten to a point where I can do it second nature. So I can design things while I'm on the fly. I could be in a production and like be doing the graphics and putting it up, which is great. But I don't even have kids coming out who can do that. And I also think that the thing Canva doesn't teach us is that other part, because you know, I can say in television and theater, there's like the pitch deck is now kind of the thing. It used to be words. I'd go in with a proposal and it was a couple pages of text and executives read text. And now the younger executives want to see pitch decks. The pitch decks, and I'm like, okay, send me pitch decks so I can kind of see what these look like. They don't tell me anything. They don't tell me what I would need to know to go into somewhere and get a buyer to buy something, which is, what am I buying? what does it do? And how can I have that information so quickly from you that I could turn around and sell it to the 50 people that I have to sell it to? Because that's the purpose of these. It's not just the people you're presenting it to. It's so that when they go away and have conversations outside of that room, they remember what that was that they saw. And if they saw 10 pitches that night, then that's a lot of competition that
Yeah.
you have. So yes, it's faster, and yes, we can all do it, which is great because we don't have to have that. But I think it's also forgetting, like, not having marketing people and not having people whose sole purpose is to just come up with that design work. It's not that it's impossible. It is possible, but it isn't easy.
I do want to go back to something that John said before about the cracks, highlighting the cracks. And what you just made me think of, Tamara, is the way Apple, I'm not so sure anymore, but used to do their advertising, which is, I remember this, there was this one commercial, it was a Christmas commercial they did, where they never really showed what they were selling. What they showed was an emotion. It was this kid who was kind of, the whole family's together getting ready for Christmas, and the kid was always off to the side with his phone or his computer, and and everyone's having fun. Hey, you want to go? No, I'm okay. And then the last scene is the whole family sitting in front of the TV, and the kid is airplaying this movie that he's been creating over the past few days of the whole family, and it's this beautiful moment. And they could have been selling AirPlay, they could have been selling an iPhone, they could have been selling Apple TV. I don't even know, but boy, did they sell an emotion. And so when I think about highlighting the cracks, right? Whether or not people know what exactly I'm going to do, if they walk away moved, excited, inspired, fearful, because there are cracks in the Brooklyn Bridge, and I'm going to do something about it, then I think that's just as powerful as a slide deck that sells a specific thing. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It is. It's how you're going to serve, right? How am I serving the people that I'm doing?
Right.
Whatever my job is, how am I there to serve?
Yeah.
And what service am I providing?
Brody,
Yeah,
it's
hi,
so good to see
everybody.
you.
Yeah, good to see you all. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, if maybe you turn up your mic just a little bit. It's a little
Well,
soft.
just need to speak up a little bit. Okay.
There you go.
How's that? Yeah, I think there's a group that does very high-end slide development and refinement for a wide variety of things. They've done everything from the slides that former vice president used for an inconvenient truth, and for corporate events, and for all these things. And Alex has used them, and he talks about them refining his decks when he thought they were pretty good, and then they made them great. And the company that he was talking about is Nancy Duarte's company, and she's got this book Slideology and some other free resources on their website. They're very expensive if you use them, but they do have a lot of free resources. And she makes a very compelling case that presentations are all about story and all about, and they make a pretty compelling case that every good, really memorable presentation is a little mini version of the hero's journey, where you're taking the audience, and the audience is the hero. You're not the hero as the speaker. You're taking the audience as the hero across some threshold onto an adventure. The bridge is falling down. It's got cracks. We need to protect it from terrorists, whatever. Then you take them onto this journey of challenges and ups and downs, and some successes and some failures and crises, and then you bring them back around to ultimately, success and or something that they can feel, and which I think is what that ad did that you talked about. Took you on a little journey with that child there. You could identify with the kid left in the corner, and so there's I think, and this has saved me so many times when I've been stuck trying to figure out a presentation about something that seems so mundane. Explain real estate closings or something like this, and then I think, well, a real estate closing has a lot of drama in it. When you think about somebody committing to go buy a house, it's the biggest decision they've ever made, and then they're credit is not good enough and they have a crisis and they can't get the loan, and then so you can really apply this formula to a remarkable variety of presentations, including things like the one that Hassan was showing us, I think.
That's such a powerful point, the idea of storytelling, that everything is storytelling. You're absolutely right.
Well, if you want somebody to remember it, stories are how we organize things and how we put them in context and so on. And it's a very powerful idea that they have. And
absolutely. You mentioned Al Gore's, and I went to look it up. I can't find the slide deck, the actual slide deck, but this is just a screenshot from, that's the slide in the background, and that black around that's making the text pop out, that Tamara, that reminds me of what you were suggesting before. And then, so he's got, or I'm sure he didn't create this himself, but he's got the black bar that makes the white text pop, and he's got what looks like a shadow that doesn't look like a lift, looks like a shadow to me on the text itself. And then, of course, what are your eyes drawn to? 7 degrees Fahrenheit, 4 degrees, because it's different. And in fact, I wonder if this was intentional, but that text also jumps out to me because in the background, the red is what catches my eye, because red for me, going back to storytelling, red is danger or warning. And so now I've got the red in the background that's calling me, getting my attention. And now I've got the red in the text also. Really interesting. Storytelling. It's all about storytelling.
Janelle Miller has a thing called Story Brand, and he does the same thing about creating your own personal brand through story.
What was the name of that book again that you were holding up, Brody? Slideology. I
just ordered it. Thank you.
Yeah, I know. I'm just
also has a thing called Data Story, which also seems interesting, which is how to use data in a similar way to tell a story.
The art and science of creating great presentations.
I think their website is duarte.com.
Yes, it is. Yeah, I saw that also, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of good free material on there. I would recommend that.
Duarte, yeah, there it is. Simplify complex. They have a whole course on it. It's $1,000, but use space methodology to overcome common slide design challenges. I'd love to see just if there's a something they can give us
go
here.
Into their resource section. Then
yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, you have to poke around to find the free stuff, but it's
there,
and it's very good.
Yeah. This is great. Virtual presentation checklist. Empathize with your audience, craft consumable content, curate your backdrop, step up your setup. Wow, this is a great, this is a really nice site. I mean, I don't want to pay $1,000, but narrative design for presentations. Yeah. All right, let's see if we can get some presentation basics. Oh no, it's still a class. This one's only $400. Wow. This is great. Good stuff. Thank you so much. I don't want to pay all that money, but I feel like I need to learn this. Story structure for craft the narrative of a presentation using principles of empathy, story, contrast, and appeals. Yeah. Analyze your audience so you can deliver value even when they resist. Clarify the core of your idea. Create supporting content with a story structure used by history's greatest communicators, and distill and communicate complex ideas with clarity. This is great stuff.
I feel like this is an office hour, second hour, perhaps.
Maybe. I think John probably knows. Alex has done some stuff on Keynote, but it's been more about how to use the different technological tools and less about presentation itself, I think.
He definitely knows these folks, and I think I've suggested a second hour with them, and he said, yeah, so that would be a good one.
That's a great idea
for the future. So.
Love that. Cool. Hassan, you're such, I'm so grateful to you that you let us kind of,
Oh, thank you for doing it, Dave. I mean, we are learning so much from you.
well, I'm learning so much from you. I mean, this was really interesting. I'm still a little bit hung up and I feel like I want to learn more about corporate versus education or corporate versus government or government versus, that's interesting to me. And the extent to which we can infiltrate these best practices into those different verticals. Cause I think they're different. Well, certainly how you infiltrate or how you teach will be different. What I was going to play with everyone today are the apps, because Tamara got me hooked last week on a couple of the apps. I completely blame you, Tamara. But
Well,
there's some really nice apps in here. One of them I found, check this out. I'll just show you this one. Wait, where is it? No, I can't find it. It was, smart mockups. I don't know if this is actually going to work because for some reason Canva is really, so check this out. So I'm going to just do a Facebook post. Wait, that's not what I wanted. Oh, here, yeah, here it is. So what I like about this is, let me find a computer here. So here's the smart mockup. Yeah, see, it's not loading. I don't know what's going on here. Canva's having a day. I don't want that. I want, hello, where's my smart mockup? I know well, it's a good thing we didn't do this today because I have no idea where it is. Smart mockup. What it essentially does is it lets you put your own images into mockups that are pre-skewed, if it will, and then it'll then skew your thing for you, which I really like.
so is it similar to the picture frames in Elements?
Yes, except those I believe are they won't adjust your photo. They won't skew your photo, I don't think.
I think you can, because I use those a lot. I think you can move your photo within that frame. It'll suck it into that frame and scale it, but I think you can also move it around. I could be lying.
Oh, I know you can move it, but what
Right.
I'm looking, I'm having the hardest time finding this. Discover apps. Let me try this again. So I want to do, where was it again? Smart mockup. This is what I want to do. Use a new design. Okay. Why is it giving me this woman? I don't know what that is happening.
Oh, let me see.
Here are the smart mockups down here. We're having trouble loading smart mockups. Check your connection or try later. Yeah, I've been having trouble with them all day. Everything else is working fine, but for some reason. Okay, so there we go. So now, if I go over to one of my uploads and I take, where's my dog? I'll take my dog and I drop my dog. No, that's not what I wanted to do. So how do I, if I have a smart, I think you have to create the smart mockup out here. Smart mockups. Publish to smart use frame mockup. Transform any image into a product mockup. Let's try this one. No, that's not it. I think this is the one I was using. Let's try this one. Use a new design.
I wish I could stay to see the rest of this, but I need to drop off. So
Yes, of course. Oh my goodness, it's making me log in. Okay, this was definitely not the one. In any case, sorry about that. Complete fail. What I loved about this is that I could put my own photo in here and it would skew it and adjust it for me. Tamara, do you think it does that on its own?
I think there is so I watch everything on YouTube and TikTok because that's my classroom these days. But I saw someone who did a layered version on Canva that did something like that. It was way more labor intensive than just popping something in. I
Right.
do know that in some of those frames in there, if you go through all the frames, they actually do have some like pictures or cell phones or things like that. So you could so they have more than just the circle and square that I thought they only
No,
did.
they absolutely do. But see,
Lots of
even
options.
what's interesting is that even these 3D, when I type in 3D,
Mhm.
it's let's try this one. Let me get rid of this. So here's a frame.
Right.
Let me throw an image. This is, I think, just going to be one
I
image.
feel like you can center the image, but I could be wrong.
So once I put an image in there, I can double click on it and I can move it around.
Move it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the image itself is 2D
Right.
and it's not skewed, as opposed to those smart mockups, which are, see, none of these have,
No, that's
none-
cool if it works because that's another really unique way to get things to pop out, right?
yes.
And to play around with the different types of design elements where there's a personal story being told and a personal touch,
Right. So
even yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say even the picture you had, if it's a hand holding the thing, that starts the story, and then it draws your eye immediately to the picture that you're going to put in there.
Right.
So that's pretty cool.
So yeah, so here's just so now
I use
this,
that one.
yeah. So I use this one all the time also. But again, what I'd love to do is to be able to skew it in space on the whatever this axis is. So the 3D, and that's where the smart mockups work. But of course, they're not working today. So we'll take a look at it next time, I guess. Okay, we'll do apps next time. Tamara, so fun being with you. Hassan, so grateful. John, Ronnie, Doug, Tony, everyone, thank you so much for hanging out. And let's head back to after hours. Bye, everyone.